All right, welcome. Happy everybody's here. We are excited to present our webinar today, Building for the Future. Um, we're going to be talking about a website build that we did for a client. So to kick us off, I'm Stephen Brent May. I'm one of the founders of One Foot Over and was heavily involved in this project. And we also have Hami Arrington on with me.
Hey there.
And then we've also got Brian Gregory from Aldridge. So Brian, can you actually introduce yourself, talk about what Aldridge does, who you guys serve, and your role there?
Yeah, everyone, I'm Brian Gray. I'm one of the partners here at Aldridge. We are an IT outsourcing and cybersecurity firm. We're headquartered here in Houston. We've got offices across Texas in the major metros, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, and then also an office in Seattle, Washington. And so we work with companies that are generally in size from 25 people to call it 500 people, and either coming in to fully outsource their IT department, or will come in and supplement their IT department. If they've got some folks that they really like, they don't want to outsource, but they realize those folks can't get them to the next level, can't properly secure the environment, those type of things, then we'll come in and build a service around them so that we're all marching towards the same goal together.
Awesome. And so we're today we're going to talk about the website project that we did for Aldridge a couple of years ago. But I've worked with Aldridge for a long time before One Foot Over. And Brian, I know you started at Aldridge in, I believe it was 2008.
That's correct.
All right. So
you're telling people how old we are.
well, all right. So I want to go back and kind of look at the evolution of the website and actually talk about how we got to the point that we built a new website for you all. But what we're really hoping to get out of today's conversation too is the process that companies we believe that they should go through when tackling a website project, because we've been on the side of it where we've managed it for clients. When I was on the client side, I managed website design projects internally. So we've experienced pain points, but we want to hear about your pain points with the project. We also want to talk about, kind of some of the lessons learned along your website journey. So if we go back to 2008, we pulled up the Aldridge website from back then, which looks a lot different than websites look right now.
That was a beauty.
I mean, I actually think we should just go back to that. This is what websites should be.
Sign of the times.
But can you kind of talk to us about this version of the website and where Aldridge was as a company at this point?
Yeah, like I said, I came about in 2008 at the organization, and I was employee number 10 here. Prior to that, it was a boutique consulting business, and there wasn't really any investment up until that point into any sales, and certainly not marketing. And so in 2008, that's the site that was there when I started, and really was a site, I believe, just to say that we had one, and if someone went to look us up, they could see, yep, Aldridge is a real company, and that's the purpose that it served. And then if you look at the site from 2008 to 2012, during that period, that's when we were really figuring out what's the core service that we're going to go to market with. Like I said, up until 2008, it was just some boutique consulting, a lot of break fix IT work, and we were just getting into this managed services thing. And so looking at what is managed services, what's complete IT management, we did a lot of hosting. So there are a lot of things that we did, and the existing site didn't represent that. And so that was really the biggest point of the change from 2008 to 2012, was enabling us from a sales perspective. We hadn't even really touched marketing, brand messaging, anything like that at that point in time.
Okay. And then how did you get from one version of the website to another? Did you guys work with an agency for that?
Oh no. At this point in time, we were working with a freelancer, one lady, and we worked with her for quite a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then we move kind of forward a little bit, and I believe this is when you all really invested in marketing for the first time, heavily, and brought in an agency. Can you talk about this version of the website and what led to you guys getting here?
Yeah. When we're looking at this version of the site, a big focus of it was around just the look of the site. So the branding that we did was, hey, let's redo the logo. Let's get new folders. Let's make sure that we've got a consistent look across the materials that we've got out there. And then we wanted our website to look similar to that. And so that was a big part of what this change was. But it was very piecemeal together. It was, I don't want to say it was lipstick on a pig, but it was kind of lipstick on a pig. On the back end of this, it was still a mess, but it looked a little bit better. And at that point in time, we thought the navigation was better. Hindsight being 2020, it was not better, but it was certainly a step in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure when left hand like sidebar navigation went away, but I mean, maybe that's something we think about bringing back in the future.
Yeah, throwback.
Okay, so you've got this version of the site. You said that you focused a lot on like the visual aesthetic of the site. And this was the first time you weren't using a freelancer here. You actually engaged an agency, right?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so then you go from that version of the site to 2017, and this is when we started working with Aldridge, and this was the first version of the website that One Foot Over was working with. Can you talk to us about how you got from the version we just looked at to here?
Yeah, so along this time frame and still today, we've grown a lot by acquisition. And so we actually acquired a company in Seattle that had the website that you're looking at, but just their branding. And so the path of least resistance, we liked their site in general. So we rebranded it, changed some words, and made it the Aldridge site as opposed to the acquired company.
So, and at this point, there was no focus really on like being clear about your messaging. It was really just sure
not,
were
not
accurate.
at all. We basically took the messaging we had before, the messaging of the acquired company, and kind of mushed them together, if you will.
I think the site looks okay though. I mean, even in today's standards, it's fine.
Yeah, we thought it was a great looking site. It was certainly cleaner. The services that we offered were more prevalent on the site, so it was clear what we did, and certainly the navigation was better.
And this is the first time too that you started using tools like HubSpot, right?
Yes, that was a big jump forward for us. We started using HubSpot on the marketing side, but then also on the sales side. So having those things work together, landing pages, and that continuity from marketing all the way through the sales cycle was a big improvement.
Okay, so like I said, this is when we started working with you guys, and once we started digging into the site and kind of understanding how you got there, one of the things that we recommended was, we believe we really need to focus on the Aldridge website and get it in a better place where it's really talking about Aldridge, it's clear about your brand, it's achieving your goals, and you guys weren't ready at the time. But there was a small incremental change from this site to this version. So can you talk about that a little bit, how you ended up here, which is it's another good looking website.
Yeah, so we were working with the freelancer who had actually done the acquired website at this point in time. And they gave us a quote. I think it was only $2,000 to go from the site you saw before to this site. There is the saying, you get what you pay for. So this site did not come with any shortage of challenges, but it was a good looking site. It was an opportunity for us to put images of our own people on the site. Up until now, we had a lot of stock images, and when we would go out, we would meet with clients, meet with prospects, and then they go to our website, they see these random people on the site. And so we wanted that personal feel. So this gave us the opportunity to do that. We also had a great idea, at least we thought it was a great idea, to put a video on the homepage. It was a cool video at the time, but it bogged our site down like crazy. I think we had a score of an F on the site because of the health. But anyhow, it gave us the ability to do some fun things for the first time on our site that the other versions of the site didn't allow us to do. So that was good, but like I said, it came with a fair share of challenges as well.
Right.
And I feel like the videos from that time, having a video on the website, you can really definitely tell that the site was launched in 2018, 2017, 2019, right around that time period.
Yeah, I think when we first started going into launching it, the video we hadn't even really thought about it, but then we started looking around at all these other sites and everyone had a video at the time. We're like, they've got a video, we've got to have a video. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things that, you know, it really stands out, like as we look at, especially the last 3 versions of the website too, like visually and aesthetically, like they all look good. Like there was no, you didn't look at these websites and think like, wow, these are duds.
yeah, and I think leading up until then, that was our main focus. We wanted something that looked nice, looked professional. But we didn't know what we didn't know as far as what should we expect from a website and what kind of results we really wanted to get. We just viewed the website as something to support our sales people that were in the field, not something that would help drive leads to our salespeople.
Right. It was more of a, I think you use this word, it was really just more of like a digital brochure than a
Yes.
sales tool.
For sure.
So as we got like to, I think it was 2021, probably, probably starting before that. I mean, the whole time we worked with you all, like we talked about this, but we finally wore you guys down and convinced you that yes, it's time to really focus on the website. And so we launched the newest version of the website in 2022. It was a pretty dramatic overhaul from the previous versions. Really a heavy focus on the content, refresh of the visual identity, and we're going to dig in and talk about kind of the pain points and how we got there. But this site went live in 2022. And so we'll get really specific about kind of the process and the results here in a second. But can you just at a really high level talk about, you know, when this site went live and, you know, the process of getting there?
Yeah, just a little bit on why we were getting there. Like I said, at the beginning of the day, we wanted to get leads. We weren't getting leads. We hadn't even really thought about, we want the website to produce leads. So we knew that going in, and that's something that we wanted to fix. We also had acquired companies in multiple cities, so we were having challenges with local geography and local SEO. And so we needed a site that would be able to do that. And then also the ability for my internal team to make updates, because again, up until now, everything that we wanted to have done, we had to go to someone else, and we changed things a lot. And so that was really holding us back. And so the process to get to here was really, I think, you guys working with us to pull that pain out of us, because we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know the challenges we were facing because we didn't understand what a website could actually do to support us.
Perfect. So Hami's going to kick us off and ask a few questions, like just have a conversation about this. But I also want to encourage everybody on here too. If you've got questions along the way, we're going to have time for those at the end. But Hami, do you want to kind of dig in and?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, we start every engagement. When we start our website, we always have a, you know, discovery time period where we say, okay, so really, what is it that you want out of this site? And, you know, what are the goals of the site? So, Brian, we had asked you and your leadership team this same question. So can you tell us from the beginning though, like what was it you wanted and needed out of this website from a business lens?
In addition to the things that I already talked about with leads and those type of things, I think one of the big things that we got out of this was the time we spent working on the messaging together. And what's truly important. We can't be all things to all people. So what's that core message that we have? What's those core services that we're delivering? Make sure that the website represents that, but it also gave us the opportunity to turn around and make sure that our entire team is speaking that same language. And I think the whole process of simplifying and reducing from, I think we were at 100 pages, and now we're down to 15, going through that process enables us to keep people focused on the things that are meaningful there.
Yeah. So earlier you also had mentioned that you wanted to have a website that your team could edit really well, right? So some of the things that we kind of pulled out during this discovery period was that we wanted to align the stakeholders, the internal stakeholders, and how they wanted to to show Aldridge on the website. Also, you know, building it for flexibility and making sure that it's a good website for a long time, so longevity. And
for
then, you know, obviously the overarching goal is to build a site that will bring you leads, right? So those are the kind of the three things that we had identified from our meetings. I'm going to turn it over to Stephen. He's going to walk through the rest of the process.
Yeah, and before I do that too, one of the questions I had, Brian, was, you know, when it came to the team making updates on the website, like the previous versions, we were working with you guys as your agency at that point, and you know, we even struggled sometimes to make updates on the website because of the way it was built. So we were experiencing the same pain point that you guys had. And I know that was a pain point for you all too, that like we couldn't even make some of the changes that you guys wanted because they weren't just the way the website was built on the back end. They weren't necessarily just simple changes that could be made.
Yeah, and from my seat, it seemed like it was a simple change we needed to make, and then every time we needed to do it, it would turn into this long, drawn-out process. And I'm like, "What's going on here, guys?" At the end of the day, it was the platform that the site was built on, and since we've implemented the new site, if you go to it and you look at it today, it looks very different from images and content and all that, but it's given us the ability to make changes as we need on the fly, and that's been critical.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let me share my screen again because I want to walk through our, you know, kind of our process that we've developed for our website projects and really talk about this. You know, we always start with this discovery and foundation, and Hami touched on this a little bit, like stakeholder interviews. Brian, do you remember us coming into the office with you and the CEO and other people at Aldridge talking through not just the website? We didn't want to just focus on the look and feel, but talking through the business objectives.
Oh, for sure. And we spent a lot of time on this, and an offshoot of those discussions with you all led into discussions on our entire sales process and the way that we talk about our services and the way that we run the process, and really tying all of that in from, again, what are we saying from a marketing perspective, but making sure that that carries all the way through the buyer's journey and into the customer journey as well.
Right. And so we kind of go from there, like starting with those conversations. And then the second phase of our process is really the strategy and planning. And before we ever touch content, before we ever touch design, you know, this is where we dig in. We said, all right, here's what we've learned from our stakeholder interviews. Here's what we've learned from going through this process with you guys. And then we start laying out kind of a framework. We're like, here's what we believe we need to have in place. Based on what you've told us, based on what we've learned, we believe this is the ideal structure of your website. This is the platform we should be using. What technology needs to exist? Because you guys had very specific things like HubSpot. We knew that had to integrate with the website, and that part was super important, right?
Yeah, we had HubSpot. We also had our ticketing system that plugged in, so when our clients need support, they go to the website. So there were some things that we needed to map out and really spend some time on.
Yeah. And also, I mean, and this is kind of the phase too, where we're making sure all those pieces are in place. Like we've got the hosting set up. We know who's going to be involved with the launch, because it's really important that all those things are there. That way we don't get to the very end and it's like, all right, now we need to pull people in. This is, you know, I would say these first two phases are probably what gets missed a lot in website projects. And I don't know if you feel like in the previous versions of your website, if you went through these kind of, maybe not these phases structured the same way, but if you feel like you got these out of previous versions of your website projects.
No, not at all. It was hey, we need a new site. We want it to look fresh and modern. And the person designing it went off and did it and said, here's your new site. Do you like it?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard stories like that. You get to the very end and it's like, all right, we're going to launch next week. Here's your site. And then nobody's seen anything as they've gone through the process. So, which is actually a good segue into our third phase, these are our content and design sprints. And so the way we structure this is like, once we know, you know, during phase 2, we've done all the research and the planning. We know what content needs to be created. We know we know what the messaging is at this point. And I believe with you guys, we did a story brand workshop to get really clear about the messaging. But we know, we know from an SEO perspective, like what we're trying to rank for, like what all those things are developed in phase 2. Phase 3 is really where we dig in and we're like, all right, let's create the content. Let's start designing the look and feel. For this project, we brought in the creative director who actually did a refresh, not of your logo, but of like your brand assets. And that part was a major overhaul from the previous versions. And how important was that refresh of like the brand elements as part of this project?
I mean, I just think consistency was critical to make sure that as you've seen, we had so many different versions over the years, and each version came with different assets that had a similar look and feel to the website at that point in time. So that when we went into this, we had a lot of assets like that out there and just needed to make sure that everything was consistent. And the design that you all came up with was very easy to have a lot of different versions that worked for a lot of different things. So that was something that we really had to make sure that we got, and we're very happy with the result because we had a lot of different use cases for that, and we needed something that could easily be replicated across all that.
And then, once we had that as part of this third phase, like we knew the look and feel, we knew the content, like we actually start developing the content, working with subject matter experts on your side for interviews, and then our team writing the content, designing the pages, and then giving those to you so that you can approve them, and then having those stop gaps along the way. That way, like I said, you don't get to the end of the project and you're seeing your website for the first time. So, just having that process of making sure you're signing off and you're bought in on the content.
Yeah, I think that was critical along the way. Like I said, this is the first time we had gone through a process such as this, and it was a big deal internally across our executive team and the rest of the folks here. And so for me in my seat, I wanted to make sure I got good buy-in from all of my team along the way, that they were happy with the direction that we were going, so that we didn't end up at the end and have people not happy with the end result. So having those stops along the way to make sure that the direction we're heading in and what we have so far is we're all on the same page was good.
Right. And then once all that's approved, I mean, that's where, really the rubber hits the road in terms of like the site is being developed and built in the platform, ready for you all. I'm making sure all the technical SEO, the development is done properly. The site is tested before we hand it over to you guys to review. And then once it's launched, that final phase, we kind of view that as like launch is almost at the finish line, because then we really want to make sure everything's set up properly, the site's performing the way it's expected. But then our job then becomes to train your team, make sure, we've built this website so they can make updates, but we want to make sure they understand how to use it as easy as it is, but then they're able to grow and scale the site after that.
Yeah, and from our perspective, there was certainly a time investment from us in steps 1 through 3, but by the time we got to 3, and I know you all had a lot of work that went into 4 and 5, we were pretty much hands off at that point in time because you guys did everything in the background. And once we got to the finish line, we all knew what the finish line looked like, and there weren't surprises at that end. So that was great, because the other versions we would launch a new site, and then the new site's live. That's when we started finding all the typos, all the bugs, all the things that are wrong with the site, and have to fix them along the way. So it was nice to be able to spend the time on the front end here to avoid that.
Perfect. Well, we're glad this process works too, because if it didn't, we'd have to start all over and build it.
Exactly. I just want to mention real quick, I do have the Crystal Award that this site won on my desk here.
There you go.
So I would say that the process works well, but 30 minutes goes by very fast. We only have 4 minutes left. I want to be able to ask you a couple of questions, Brian.
Sure.
So if anybody has any other questions, please submit them. If we don't get to them, don't worry, we will send you, we will respond to you individually. So the first question is, Brian, you had this beautiful website that was launched. It's easy to use. And you were saying that you were getting leads in, that it's worked. how did you measure the ROI of the website?
Yeah, so looking at how we measured it, everything is tracked in HubSpot. If it's not in HubSpot, it didn't happen, is our philosophy. So every deal, every lead that comes in, we track it there, and make sure that again, marketing and sales are working together to track all of that together.
Yeah.
And are there any specific results from the website that you guys have seen that, you know, you've been able to attribute to the website?
So for sure, I mean, we track a lot of KPIs and making sure that things are healthy, but the ultimate result that we want was leads that ultimately turn into closed deals. And looking at 2024, we sourced $3.9 million in pipeline that we attribute to the website. And of that, we've closed 600,000 of that so far. Our sales cycle's rather lengthy. It can be upwards of a year or so. So we've got plenty of that 3.9 million that's still out there to close. But even with 600,000 of that already being closed and 3.9 million in pipeline, that's a significant improvement to where we were before.
Yeah, it's almost 20%.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So we have another question. This is probably a question, Stephen, for you. So the question is, what software are you using during design sprints, and how many design stops do you suggest?
So the way we structured that part, so the design software, we've used different tools along the way. We've used Illustrator, we've used Figma. It really depends on the project and, you know, the designer that's leading that one. But the way we really break down the content and design sprints is we'll start with the first design sprint is really about once we've got an approved look and feel. So before that, we provide 2 mood boards. Here's 2 visual look and feels for the website. If you've already got established branding, we're not touching branding or anything like that. We work with your existing brand guidelines and provide 2 visual style tiles or mood boards. Once you approve a design direction for the website, then we move forward with that and we start creating kind of the necessary assets like the right size logos, favicon, stuff like that in the first design sprint, while the initial round of copy is getting created, which is typically 4 to 5 pages in the first sprint. Once that copy is approved for those pages, then the second design sprint really becomes creating the visual mock-up for those pages. So you'll get, you know, 4 to 5 pages laid out in a full design in the second design sprint based on approved content from sprint 1. And then that process just continues based on how many pages are being created for the website. So, you know, if it's a 15-page website, probably 3 to 4 design sprints. If it's more than that, you know, the design sprints will go on a little longer. But it's, you know, each phase, you know, we tackle usually between 4 to 5 pages in each sprint, and then until we get to the finish line. There's also, you know, if we're doing templated pages like service pages or resources, things like that, a lot of times that part can go faster.
Yeah. Okay, so we're actually at time. It goes by pretty fast. It goes by so fast. So there is one other question of how did we decide what to cut from the website from 100 pages to 15 pages? We will send that answer in an email. But Stephen, if you could share your screen real quick. So you might be wondering if you have any other questions or if you want to talk to Brian, how do you contact him?
Yeah, absolutely. So
There you
Brian,
go.
if people have questions about their IT or cybersecurity, are you the person they should talk to?
Yeah, reach out to me directly. Happy to have a conversation about that. Even if we can't help them, I'd be happy to point them in the right direction. But yeah, anyone that's wanting to talk about IT cybersecurity challenges, send them my way.
Perfect. And we'll also share the slides, like this presentation, in a follow-up email and include Brian's contact information there too. But then if you have questions for Hami and myself, our contact information is here if you don't already have it. And then we also built this framework that we talked about. We actually put it together in a PDF guide. So whether you want to work with 1 Foot Over or, you know, you just have questions about managing your website project yourself, you know, the guide is pretty thorough and pretty, you know, self-guiding. You can use that as your own roadmap. So you can grab that at this QR code, but again, we'll be following up and making sure you've got access to that, that PDF and that framework guide after the webinar.
Yeah, that framework is the actual framework that we use. So, so let us know if you have any questions on that as well.
All right, awesome. Thanks,
right.
Brian, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Thanks to everybody else for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.